Okay, it's essentially a down week in the NFL as we wait for the Super Bowl, but it's not a down week for NFL fans out there in Ireland because Jeff Reinebold is in the country on your grand tour. Jeff, how are you getting on?
The Irish invasion is going well. We were in Belfast last night, and it was a packed house. And these fans, from the first time I came over here about 10 years ago, these fans have impressed me with, just how passionate they are about the game, and how knowledgeable they've become in the time span from I first came over here until now. When you talk to the fans, when the show's over and we get a chance to really unpack, there are a number of fans who really are quite knowledgeable about the NFL, and we got to thank guys like you who bring the game to the fans. It helps spread the word.
Well, we obviously enjoy it. It's difficult sometimes, particularly when you're a fan of a West Coast team, to stay awake at 4 o'clock in the morning. But you've been that soldier on telly.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, when you're a 49ers fan like you, have you recovered at all yet, or are you still licking your wounds?
I mean, it gets worse and worse because Brock Purdy's injury is now 6 to 12 months. That's a big spread. 12 months takes him out of the whole season next year, really. 6 months probably means Trey Lance is the quarterback next season. We don't know what that's going to be like. I am concerned that they keep sacrificing their quarterbacks.
I'll be honest with you. I was surprised that they were as quick to say Jimmy's not going to be back with them next year.
Yeah, straight away.
Because, when you manage in a professional roster, what you're managing is assets. And he's got 2 assets right now that are hurt. Jimmy was scheduled to come back next week, but Trey has had 2 surgeries on that leg since he's broke it, and now you've got Brock's going to come off of elbow surgery, which is that's your livelihood, your ability to throw the ball, and your elbow is under that torque stress all the time. So I think it's really interesting that they would come out 3 or 4 days after they're eliminated and say, we're not bringing Jimmy G back, but they must have a plan.
I think, and I actually wanted to talk to you a little bit about this, about how the game has evolved, and we're seeing the super teams be built the way even the 49ers were able to go and add Christian McCaffrey. The benefit of having the 2 QBs on their rookie contracts means that they can pay Nick Bosa, they can pay Christian McCaffrey. The Debo contract continues to ratchet up. Fred Warner's contract is top of the market too. We're seeing this now where so many teams are putting the chips in, and most of them get away with it. The Rams didn't get away with it this year, right?
Right.
But maybe the Rams are going to be okay next year.
Well, I think it's really interesting to watch. You talk about 2 kinds of teams that are what we call draft and develop, where they're going to draft their own players, they're going to develop those players and keep those players as long together as they can. That's the old school way. The Rams have changed the thinking in the NFL right now. We saw them go out and give up, Jared Goff, and so that they could bring Matthew Stafford in, a proven winner at quarterback, which is the most important position on the field. Now, you look at teams like San Francisco, for example. Brock Purdy cost just a little bit, $900 and some thousand this year. When they defeated the Cowboys in the divisional round, the Cowboys paid their quarterback, Dak Prescott, $40 million a year. So when you can get a guy on a rookie contract, that allows you to have all kinds of big contracts around him. If your quarterback's on a big contract, then you have to backfill with rookie contracts to make the salary cap. And that's one of the things that makes the NFL so unique, unlike the Premiership or leagues that don't have a salary cap. Every team should have the same access to talent. You shouldn't be able to buy a team. And that's one of the reasons why we don't see dynasties anymore in the National Football League.
Unless, of course, it turns out the QB in the Super Bowl is on one leg going to be able to begin creating one, or are they crowned one now because they've reached a final, lost a final, won a final?
I think if the metric that you use is Super Bowl championships, right? And that's what we used with the Green Bay Packers initially, and then it was the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. You have to win multiple Super Bowls before you're considered a dynasty.
3 is the number, is it?
That's the magic number.
Yeah.
2, you got, you're going to be in the conversation. If you get 3, particularly 3 within a short span, like 3 within 5 years, then you're considered a dynasty. When you just win 1, you're considered a team that won a Super Bowl but could never. Right now, the knock on the Chiefs would be they've never been able to go back and do it again.
The quarterback position so it's the kind of counter argument to the money being more valuable than the picks when you're building those super teams at the moment, is that if you find a quarterback at whatever contract he's on, it's great when Joe Burrow is still in the contractual situation that he's in. Josh Allen is not in that contractual situation anymore, and that they've had to pay him. And obviously Mahomes is the highest paid athlete in world sport at the moment. But when you have those players, it's kind of it's a seesaw, really. If you can surround them with mediocre talent because they're so good, that's okay. But if your quarterback isn't that good, you've got to surround them with superstar talent. The ideal situation is when you discover someone like Jalen Hurts, who may not be on Mahomes' level, but might be, and is still on a rookie contract. So there's a little window here where the Philadelphia Eagles could go back to back and have an incredible team.
Right, and I think that that's the balancing act that every club has to do every year, because you have to be. The way the salary cap works is fascinating, because you have to be underneath the salary cap at the end of the year, but during the season you have to be under the cap every week. So it's the most important guy in the building, isn't really the head coach anymore in professional football. It's the capologist. It's the guy, the accountant, who understands the rules of how to push money forward, pay players signing bonuses, which they can prorate over the length of the contract. There's a number of ways that they can manipulate the numbers, and that guy, the expert capologists, is just as important as any player on the roster.
Is this? Since the cap came in, right? Is this the most interesting period where you're actually seeing teams be clever at that and come kind of with an ambush in a way, a little bit like the Rams went from being a complete joke. They were 8-8 every year, no matter what happened. They could have a great team, they could have a terrible team, they'd finish 8-8, and then Sean McVay arrives in and goes F them picks, and all of a sudden they Super Bowl won. Like, is this the most interesting and weird period?
I think it is. I think it is, because again, the old school way was draft and develop. But what they found out was that even the billions of dollars that they spend on evaluation of college talent, going to the combine, draft interview, all the stuff that they do, it's a 12-month job for the scouting department, and costs teams a tremendous amount of money. They're still finding that their success rate, their hit rate on players is not very high. And it's especially bad on quarterbacks. They're the hardest guys to evaluate, because you look at, we just said goodbye to the greatest player that's ever played our game, the most successful player that's ever played our game in Tom Brady. He was the 200th player picked the year he came out. 31 NFL teams passed on him 6 times. His own team passed on him 5 times. So that goes to show you that it's not an exact science. And there were enough guys that were taken early in the draft that flamed out, that never really helped their teams. But the first round draft pick is considered so valuable, right? And if you miss on a quarterback in the first round, and this is what I think San Francisco is, this is a big, big year now for Trey Lance. He has to show that he's worth what they gave up, which was significant to get him.
3 first-round picks to get him. But to your point, Brock Purdy is the last player picked and wins his first 7 starts. It's like it is a complete lottery in that. And why is it still such a lottery?
Well, I think because we say this all the time. It's an imperfect game played by imperfect humans and officiated by imperfect officials. And the same thing's true. There's nobody and there are some very good personnel guys, but there's nobody that you can measure them, you can weigh them, you can see how fast they run, how high they jump, all of those measurement things. But the thing that's so difficult to measure are what we call intangibles, the characteristics of the player. Is he a worker? Is he a good person? Here's an example. Brady, if you just look at Brady's, and I said this last night in Belfast, hey, go get his combine video where he's standing there. There's a part at the combine where they stand in their underwear and it's like a model. They take a shot and they take a shot just to see what their body looks like.
Model / mugshot.
Yeah, mugshot, right? And I told the people at in Belfast last night. I said, go do that, and you'll feel better about yourself today, because he had an old man's body at 23, and he was never a great athlete. He couldn't run. He couldn't jump. He didn't have short burst quickness. He didn't have a very strong arm. He had a strong arm, not a very strong arm. But yet, he ended up being the most successful player that's ever played the position, the most important position in the game. But it was a perfect marriage between a player and a coach and a system that allowed him to be what he was capable of being. And because he was incredibly driven, right? He was going to do whatever he had to do to win. As a matter of fact, at a time when he was renowned as the best player in the game, he took less money so that he could have better teammates around him, because winning was more important to him, and he was smart enough to realize he was going to get it on the back end. Over the long play, he was going to get it. He played 23 years, and in my opinion, we'll never see the likes of him again.
His new Fox contract is the payback for all the Super Bowls.
All of it. And the ability to say, I have 7 Super Bowl rings. I mean, there's not a team that has 7 Super Bowl rings.
He has as many playoff victories as the Dallas Cowboys, so that's not bad.
Not too bad at all.
I heard Steve Young talk about the difference of the mobile quarterbacks from the Brady era quarterbacks, and because of the new rules, it was his contention that defenses can't attack the way they want to, and so having a mobile quarterback suddenly opens up a pocket of space for you to operate in. And that's why you're seeing the Josh Allens, and I don't know if he includes Burrow or not in this, if Burrow is more of a traditional pocket passer, or if actually we haven't fully seen exactly what he's going to develop into just yet. But that the Jalen Hurts of this world completely changes what you need to do on defense.
Here's my theory on this whole deal. You look at the game of college football and you look at the game of pro football, and they're different games. They're played in different ways traditionally. But what coaches who are interested in, number one, they want to win, but number two, they want to keep their job. When I worked for Dick Vermeil, who's a Hall of Fame head coach and won Super Bowl with the St. Louis Rams and took the Eagles to the Super Bowl, he used to say to us, it's a 3-year process before you even start to see results. He said the first year you're just finding out what you have and don't have. The second year you start to build. The third year you should start to see results. Well, that's the old school way. You don't get 3 years anymore. These owners want to win, and they want to win right now. So what the head coaches, in the interest of their self-preservation, did is, if the quarterback's the most important player on the field and he plays a different game than we play, doesn't it make sense to kind of incorporate the things that he did in college so that he can play better, faster, and we have more chance to win early in the NFL? And that's what happened. You look at Sirianni and what he's doing with Jalen Hurts, it gives Jalen Hurts the best opportunity to be a great player. If Jalen Hurts has to, and I will say this as we talk about the Super Bowl, if Jalen Hurts gets behind on the down and distances and it's 3rd and 8 the whole game, and he's got to win from the pocket, Kansas City will beat him. But if he's able to keep balance in their offense and run the ball and use the RPOs and all the things that Sirianni has brought into the offense at Philadelphia, then he has a chance to win the game because he is a dynamic player. He's not a great quarterback yet. He's a dynamic athlete playing the quarterback position, and when they are on schedule and can run the ball, they run the ball better than anybody in the NFL. 39 rushing touchdowns. That's the best in the history of the National Football League.
Is that slightly an underrated storyline heading into this, because most of the focus has been on the injured quarterback for San Francisco? But actually, so San Francisco had the number 1 defense heading into that game, and they did pretty well in the first half, but they still were conceding touchdowns on the ground in a way that they hadn't done up to this point, which you've got to say is because it's nothing to do with the injured quarterbacks. Okay, field position might have helped in one of the touchdowns, but that Philadelphia were absolutely going to win that game almost.
Well,
no matter who was playing quarterback.
Where's the strength of Philadelphia's football team? I mean, everybody talks about A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and, all 3 running backs that they have and Hurts. But really, to me, the strength of that football team is in both sides of the line of scrimmage. up front. Their offensive line, that Lane Johnson's the best right tackle in football. Then you got Isaac Seumalo, who's a great right guard. Jason Kelsey's going to go to the Hall of Fame as a center. They've got a second-round draft at left guard. And Jordan Mailata, who's an Australian guy who never played football till 7 years ago, had never played the game. Howie Roseman drafted him in the 7th round, the last round of the draft, and said he's big, he's strong, he's an athlete, we'll develop him into a football player. He's turned into a great football player. And when San Francisco had to be one-dimensional and Philadelphia knew that they couldn't throw, it was over because they just pounded and pounded and pounded away. And San Francisco's defense, you're right, they played really well, but they had no chance because I don't know if that Monty Python movie, The Life of Brian, if you remember that one, where the knight gets his arm cut off and then they cut the other and he keeps fighting. That's what San Francisco's defense was like in that game. They had no shot.
Do you feel like one of the things that, again, the extra game has meant that the teams are slightly more worn down when they get to the stage of the season, and it's kind of unfortunate in that both quarterbacks have injury concerns over them. We have the injury to Jalen Hurts' shoulder, and we obviously have the high ankle sprain, which has had an impact, not a huge impact, but some impact on...
Well, you know what? You bring up a point with that whole question that I think is one of the reasons why we're never going to see anybody challenge Tom Brady's records, because these quarterbacks now get exposed to more hits than ever before. And you look at Lamar Jackson, who was a sensation early in his career in an offense that put him in harm's way a great deal. He got hit a lot in that offense because it's by design. It's like a college football offense. And now, the last 2 or 3 years of his career, when he is getting to his big contract year, he's been hurt. He was, they have a great football team. He hurts his knee, and their football team becomes very average very fast. So I think it's a really interesting thought. And one of the things that I think the NFL has got to understand is this, and they do, but I think the Players Association has really got to work to keep educating the fans and the teams and owners and everybody that this is not tennis. This is not badminton. This is a violent game played by big guys on a very small field, and you look at injuries. You don't want injuries to impact especially the playoffs and the Super Bowl, the run to the Super Bowl, because and it's not because I picked them, but it's because I truly believe that the San Francisco 49ers were the best team in football over the last half of the season, and as soon as Brock Purdy went down, it was over.
They have said that they're in favour of the extra quarterback being available to you on your roster, but not counting against your game day squad. It's like, okay, so 3 quarterbacks on the active roster for all games. It seems like sometimes we have to experience these things, but...
Yeah, you know what? And that's one of the things I give our league credit for, is they continue to evolve in how they address rules. Number one thing they've always said is player safety, and that's true. And I think what you're going to see is those rugby scrums on the goal line that have now they've allowed. They're going to change that because somebody's going to get hurt in there.
Yeah.
And I think each year the competition committee looks at what they can do to make the game better. Their interest, number one, is in competitive balance, the integrity of the game. Well, and I'm not saying this because I picked the 49ers. I'm saying this because I'm as a football guy. When Philadelphia realized, and especially after Josh Johnson went out, there was no chance for San Francisco anymore. And they're not going to feel sorry for you. They're not going to send you sympathy cards across the 50-yard line. I mean, they're going to try and beat you to death at that point, right? They're going to close the deal.
Yes.
And, so the league now, if they can give teams a third quarterback and you can activate him on an emergency basis like what happened to San Francisco, at least you got a fighting chance. But here's again how the game is changing and coaching is changing. The whole thing is changing. Normally, you don't give your quarterback reps at all in practice during the week, right? But now, as these guys are being exposed to more hits and there's a greater chance that you're going to lose one at some point during the course of the game, your number 2 has got to be ready to play. So now it's going to force coaches to adjust how they how they practice and how they give reps to their players.
I think there was something like 80-something quarterbacks used by the 32 teams over the course of the season. And as that happens, you get more and more of these guys who end up being lifetime reserve quarterbacks. And, fair play to them. It's one of the best jobs in world sport.
Until you got to go in there like Josh Johnson.
Yeah, poor Josh. He's, that didn't end great for him. You've obviously, you said you've been coming over for 10 years and you've seen the ebb and flow of the sport to a point where it seems like it's never been more popular, particularly in England. Like the Jags has been a long, slow, steady build to get to a point where they had a good football team. It was a bit of a punchline a lot of the time that the games would be coming over and it's like, oh, it's the Jags, great, hooray. But now they've got a great team, great QB, Super Bowl winning head coach, and they've been really good at building their team over the last while. So as they come, that's going to add some more excitement. What's your sense of where we are at the moment in that?
Well, I think we're I'll just speak internationally first, and then to make it more British Isle centric. I think the game is healthier than it's ever been around the world. More kids are playing. More, there are more countries where you find NFL players. I mean, Australia, who has never had a chance at or has no Super Bowl winner. Right, no player ever out of Australia has worn a Super Bowl ring. There have been Australian players, but no Super Bowl champions. Well, Philadelphia's got 2 guys on that team and a 3rd guy on the practice roster, so they could have 3 Super Bowl rings after this, after next week's over with. And you look at the success of the games that were held in Germany, the games that were held in Mexico City, the continued success of the London games. The fact that now the Jags are on the ground in London, they have an office in London. They're on. They're trying to improve flag football around the UK. All of those things. Teams are now starting to get merchandising and marketing rights in countries around the world. So there are 3 teams in Germany. There's 3 teams, I think 3 or 4 in England. I would not be surprised very, very soon that we don't see the Steelers have some sort of a marketing agreement here in Ireland.
Right.
That's a natural with the Rooney family ties. And, you go around and you realize that this is an international business. It's a gigantic international business of football. And through television, through radio, through the internet now, there's more access, there's more information, there's more education. And so the trickle-down effect is the game gets better at every level.
It's funny, the Premier League, the international rights outstripped the local rights at one stage, and that's obviously never going to happen with American football because the American market is so big, but they're always looking for incremental revenue, and the amount of incremental revenue available globally is huge.
Yeah, and see, this is where this is how it's all. The NFL is such an amazing construction because it's 32 of the biggest capitalists in the world that live underneath a communist system, right? Because it's shared revenue throughout the league. So when they decide what the salary cap is, and the salary cap just went up, I think, another $40 million for next year, it's based upon total revenue, right? And the players have negotiated a contract that says a certain percentage of your total revenue has to be made available for player salaries. And so as the NFL goes out and generates more and more revenue, the salary cap goes up and up and up, and it's more for everybody. And that's why I think you see 32 of the rich guys. How do you ever get 32 rich guys to agree on anything? And I'm talking about mega rich guys. Well, the biggest way is by getting them to understand that, the bigger the pie gets, the bigger your slice is. And that's for the players, that's for the coaches, that's for everybody involved in the game.
Are you heading to Glendale? Are you there for the week?
Yes, we are. We're going to go. I'm going to leave on Sunday and get in Sunday night, and then we're going to crank it up Monday morning. Have you been?
No.
Oh, you got to go. I mean, you got to go. And the first organized event is what they call opening night. And they bring in to typically a basketball arena both of the teams. And, you have access to the players. But what it has turned out to is an international media extravaganza. And everybody is vying to get their picture taken or on TV or whatever. So you see I mean, you see some of the craziest people dressed up in outfits, costumes. One time there was a guy in a wedding dress trying to ask Tom Brady questions. I mean, it's the most bizarre thing in the world. But that's the start of the madness of Super Bowl week. And then all day long, Radio Row is a phenomenon. It's, there are probably 200 media outlets, radio stations, television stations, have little booths, and it's just an ongoing battle for information and who can come up with the best story. And you watch by Wednesday, the players are so bored of it. They just want to get away and go play the game because they've been asked the same question 15 times, and it's really an amazing atmosphere.
Does that ever have an impact on the outcome? Are there teams who lose it that week?
Yeah,
they get carried away?
I think so, and I think it's interesting. The guys that I've talked to that have been there and done it, and the successful coaches that have, been there and done it. It's one of the things. It's interesting if you look at historically over the 50-some years that they played the Super Bowl, a team going there for the first time rarely wins. It's usually a team that goes back a second time because there's no way that you can prepare them for what this week is like. Because, I mean, they take the teams and they move, get them out of town and all that, but still the pull on their time, the pull on their attention, all the distractions, everything that you, as a football coach, you don't want before a game, you get on Super Bowl week.
I have a vague recollection of Ndamukong Suh coming over and doing some games with you guys.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Great guy.
And here he is, like, I'm going to take half the season off, and then I'll decide which
that's
of these teams I think is going to win.
That's what a veteran can do, though, because he doesn't want to go to training camp.
No,
and he doesn't want to play 17 games.
He does not.
He just give me the back half, right,
and the ring,
and I'll be all good. He is really a misunderstood guy because, you hear all the stories about him stepping on people's hands and punching guys in the pile and all. And there's a lot of it that's true.
Yeah.
But he is also extremely bright and
I hear he's a financial whiz kid.
Yeah, and very, very, very good person. And, you guys had Nebraska here in the college game last year. And Ndamukong, I saw interview he did last week. He's got a big Nebraska N in his locker in Philadelphia, and he gives money every year, a ton of money back to the University of Nebraska because he said that was where he grew up. That's where he learned to be a man. And if it hadn't been for Nebraska, he doesn't believe his whole NFL career would have happened.
Yeah, he could be haunting the nightmares of Kansas City and Andy Reid. What do you think? How's this going to play out?
I think it's I think this is going to be a fascinating game. Number one for the Chiefs. Advantage Chiefs, they've got a week for those people to heal. And when I say those people, I'm talking about he got decimated at receiver. I mean, they got Marcus Kemp out there catching passes at the end of the game, and Marcus Kemp had no idea he was even going to dress until the day before the game.
Right.
And so, they've got to get healthy at receiver. They need to get Scanling back. They need to get their receivers healthy so that Pat has as many weapons as he can have. Kelsey's got a bad back. He had back spasms. He did not. He played well enough, but he didn't play like you would think Kelsey would play. And then I think for them, the other thing is, can their defense, which is not built to stop the run, it's built to play from ahead, to rush the passer, to be able to pressure the quarterback, when he's behind. Because they expect their offense is going to score early, score often, and so how do you build a defense? You build a defense to defend from ahead. They're not real good at playing run defense. They've been leaky at run defense for a couple years. It'll be interesting to see what they do to try and shore that up because Chris Jones is really their only...
He's got to wreck the game.
Yeah, he's got to because Frank Clark is a pass rusher. Karlaftis, the rookie from Greece, is a pass rusher. They got pass rushers and Chris Jones. Well, they got to get some play out of some of those other guys or Philadelphia just run the ball on them. If Philly gets up or can stay within a touchdown for 3 quarters, I think Philly's got a great chance. But if Kansas City jumps up a couple scores and Philly can't run the ball, then Philly's in trouble.
And if Andy Reid wins this, is he the second greatest coach of all time? It's like he's getting into that.
You know what? I'm a big Andy Reid fan, and I think this is there's so many storylines in this game. Here's a guy that was in Philadelphia for 14 years, won a Super Bowl, but never finished. You remember the game where they're trying to drive at the end of the game to win, and Donovan McNabb's his quarterback, and he's out of the huddle throwing up, and and they couldn't finish the game, and so Philadelphia fired him after 14 years, and he did a great job but he could never win the big one, right? He's out of work for 5 days, and Kansas City brings him in, and again, he and Brett Veach, the general manager, have a real idea about how they want to build that team. They get Patrick Mahomes. They sit Patrick Mahomes for a year and teach him how to be a quarterback. He comes back the next year and wins a Super Bowl. I mean, it's a great story. It's going to be really interesting to watch how that plays out with the Philadelphia media, which is a really tough media. I think they really love Andy Reid, but they also love the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, yeah. Too. Yeah, fly, Eagles, fly. You're in the Woolshed tonight. It's sold out, so if anybody's listening to this, they can't come, but they can
sneak in the back door. We'll get you. We'll find out. We'll find a way. This is going to be a lot of fun. We did this last night in Belfast, and we're going to try and expand it next year and take it more around, because everywhere when we first floated the idea that we were going to come over here, Michael McQuaid from Pro Football Ireland bounced the idea off me. I said, sure, I'll come. I love going to Ireland. And the next thing we know, we got 2 venues, sold them out in 12 hours, and there was a great deal of interest from around the island. So we hope to expand on it next year and go to 4, maybe 6 places, and continue to, hopefully educate, teach, preach, missionary work, or whatever you want to call it, about NFL.
Have we any hope of getting a game? We thought that when
I'm telling you, I don't want to say I said it here first, but I'm going to tell you I said it here first. There's going to be a football game here. I think an NFL game will come to this island within 5 years. You have everything you need. You have a beautiful stadium. Aviva Stadium is a gorgeous stadium, right? You have a fan base that's hungry for the game. And I think as just our little part of it, when you look at the reception that we got in the crowd last night in Belfast, and the crowd we're going to get tonight in Dublin, and you realize that that's just a small little bitty thing, right? Well, it's here. The interest is here. And the NFL, as much as you can say, you can find reasons not to like anybody, but one thing I'll tell you about the NFL, if they feel that there's a pocket of fans and a revenue source there, they're going to go to that place. And like I say, I think Pittsburgh's going to come in here, and I think we're going to have a real presence on this island very soon from the National Football League.
Best of luck tonight. Enjoy the game and have a safe trip to Glendale.
Thank you so much for having me in, man. It's great to be on the best show in Ireland, so I can say I did that now in my life.
Nice one, Jeff.
Click
Thanks a
that
million.
box.
Cheers.